This episode of the Coarse podcast has been brought to you by Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, family-owned and operated screen printing and embroidery business located in a historic storefront on Old Berwick Road in the heart of Espy. They've been doing screen printing for over 20 years. They have high-quality product at a low price. Be sure to check them out. Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, 570-784-1212. Now, on to the show.
Hi, this is Stephen Reichland from Project Fire and Project Smoke, and you're listening to Sean Rossler on the Coarse Grind podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Episode number 196 of the Coarse Grind podcast. With you as always, host, creator, Sean Rossler. How the hell is everyone doing? We are back. Again, it's been a little bit, I get it, but I feel like we are starting to find a gentle, if variable cadence in it all. I'm still eating, still enjoying, still posting. Thanks, InstaFans, for tuning into that shit show. And we're getting slowly but surely back to what we'd call regular here on the CGPC, whatever that even means. In that renewed normalcy, you always turn first to family and friends, and I can say without a shadow of a doubt, there's one family who's been part and parcel of our feeling of support since May, and their name is in line with one of my favorite Mexican beers of all time, and no, right now would be a bad time to have a friend named anything with Rona. It's been a long time trying to land this guy, and I can say we finally did. So moving on, tonight's guest originally hit the main scene as a music PR guy, a couple bands I'm sure you'd recognize, but I'll let that all go for now. Around 2013, he recalculated away from the dog-eat-dog of PR into working as a bartender, which is, let's be honest, a gateway to awesomeness. From there, he freelanced a bit as a publicist, but most importantly, and relevant to this show, headed to culinary school to be, of all things, a private chef. He keeps the portfolio pretty tight on clientele, but suffice it to say his Instagram is enough to make you realize just how amazing his skill sets are, stemming originally, anyway, from his family name and clear, obvious culinary roots. Again, familiar as I am with this incredible family, it's hard for me to take the fanboyism out of the family properly enough to focus on the skills and the story in question. Rest assured, I'm going to allow him to do all the storytelling about what got him to point B. So let's bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, music PR icon turned culinary student, then publicist, and then private chef, Chef Chris Pacifico. What's going on, brother?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. I can't stand how good I am right now because we're hooking things back up. I'm finally getting to talk to you. It is amazing. And I cannot wait to hear all about where the hell you get this amazing inspiration from. I seriously, I watch a lot of Instagram feeds. Yours is probably the one that has given me most reason to clear my screen off. From drool. Perverts, I hear you at home. From drool, knock it off. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Folks new to the program, folks with terrible short-term memories, like yours truly, starters, mains, and afters. Starters, we're going to talk about what got the guest in question to where they're at currently. Mains, we'll talk about what they're doing. And afters, a little bit more irreverent, a little bit more off the cuff, but no one's been severely bodily injured in 195 episodes, so I don't see it happening today. So without further ado, Chris Pacifico, let's jump right into it. Tell me about where and what you grew up eating.
Well, my mother's family is Italian. My father's family is Italian as well. So really a lot of Italian food, a lot of, bread, starches, carbs, pasta, a lot of simple food. My mother's family is from the Abruzzi side of Italy, which is a very rocky, hilly part of Italy. It's kind of like this desolate, barren land where people actually go to hide a lot of times. It's kind of like the desert of Italy, but rocks. So you have a lot of mountain, foresty, rustic food. And my father's family's in Sicily, which is a lot of the leftover, simple, poor, poverty kind of food. You take leftover breadcrumbs, spices, garlic, dried fruits, and nuts. So I grew up around a lot of that. I watched a lot of TV, a lot of PBS as a kid. So I was big into Julia Child, The Frugal Gourmet, Justin Wilson, who we talked about recently.
Yep.
And Jacques Pepin. And so from that part, I just really had inspiration just to I was always fascinated by food, how it was made, the height, the color, the smell, the taste, everything that kind of went into it.
Yeah.
The first, I will say, my main inspiration, like in my personal life, aside from those famous chefs I just mentioned, was my dad's mother, my grandmother, because she was just an amazing cook. Everything she did was so simple and good and delicious and aromatic.
Yeah.
And I say the other one would possibly be my own father, because the first thing that made me actually want to get my hands dirty cooking was when I was a kid. For dinner one night, I think I was maybe 6 or 7, I can't quite remember, around that age.
Yeah.
He wanted to make, she's like, do you want an omelet? I'm like, what's an omelet? As a kid, I thought scrambled eggs were just these scrambly, wobbly things. And he's like, no, it's like, it's like he put mushrooms in them. And I'm like, this is a scrambled egg you can like put things into and you
right.
can eat it any time of day. I'm like, this is amazing. And so really from there, just kind of, the interest just kind of picked up.
Yeah, man. The omelet, there's one famous chef, I can't remember, who says you make a soup, and I don't think that's Jacques Pepin. I think that might be Puck. I think that might be Wolfgang Puck. When you come on to interview, he has you make a soup. But there's one that has you make an omelet because it is the most simple. I mean, it really is, right? And
Actually,
at the same time, you can jack that up.
Jacques Pepin actually, funny because Jacques Pepin actually did say that on one of his shows. If you go on YouTube, there's an old show, Jacques Pepin, from the late 80s, early 90s, where he's showing the difference between a French omelet and a classic country omelet. And he does say that when you have an interview, that's what you have to kind of show.
That's who it was then. That's who it was.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really, when you get down to it, I know we're going to get into like present day and what you do and how you do it, but really simplicity.
I had a chef one time in an interview say, make me an omelet. And I said, do you want a classic French omelet? I said, do you want a classic country omelet or do you want a classic French rolled omelet? He goes, well, then never mind that. He goes, you're cool.
Ah, that's awesome.
All he said.
That's awesome. Next time you really got to jack them up and do the Japanese style where it's like in that deep pan and then they roll it. I forget the
tornado omelet.
Tornado, there it is. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then once he said that, he's like, cool, you're hired. And then he goes, now go peel this 90 pounds of potatoes. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing too. Like the generation that grew up on Food Network looks at like culinary as celebrity, and like it don't matter like where you come in at. Like you're gonna be peeling potatoes, you're gonna be busting your knuckles, and you have to be cool with it.
Well, along the lines, I've always seen a lot of chefs who culinary school is kind of a weird thing among chefs because. This day and age, it does help. Culinary arts degree on your resume does help, but also experience helps as well. So you have a lot of chefs who did go to culinary school, but I've also met a lot of chefs who are very successful and doing very well, who literally just started in the kitchen washing dishes.
Yep.
And then one night, somebody didn't show up on their shift, which happens a lot in hospitality, and they just put them on the line, and that's how they kind of worked their way up from there. And they are just as good, if not sometimes better, than chefs who have all the culinary accolades,
Yeah, we get into the battle of taught versus made. Let's go back to your story for a little bit, because you mentioned the inspiration, and the word I keep hearing used is aromatic. If I put you in a time machine and we go back and you think of like childhood foods growing up, what are those smells that tug at your heartstring? Like what were the dishes?
Well, I mean, we had a lot of soup growing up, so I think aromatics is very important in soup. Like garlic, celery, onions. Basic mirepoix. Celery, onion, garlic. And with the seasonings and the fat, you kind of put them with. The main food, the two foods I can say I really grew up with as far as that really kind of got me was my grandmother made shrimp scampi a lot.
Nice.
We used to go to her house every Friday night when I was little, so it was just like the way there's the shrimp and the oil and the garlic and the parsley, and you just sop it up with bread. And they have a similar thing in Spanish food too. It's called gambons, I think. But basically, what happened is with Italian shrimp scampi, it was just like 4 simple ingredients. So delicious. You leave the shrimp on the shell and you suck the juice out of the shell before you pop it open underneath the shrimp. There's that. And I would say my father he's always making Italian wedding soup, the little meatballs and the pastina, which another good use of mirepoix aromatics. And so those really, I'd say Italian wedding soup and shrimp scampi. are the first thing that got me into aromatics. Side note, I am not against vegan food or vegan recipes. I sometimes, I'm what I call a flexitarian, where like usually I start my day off. I try on the weekdays to start my day off with what is considered a quote unquote raw diet, just to kind of have that in there. But I do believe that vegan food, there are recipes that are naturally vegan, just because they were made that way, because they were made by impoverished people. That's all they had to cook with.
Right.
I like vegan recipes that are naturally vegan, not forced to be made vegan, like a vegan bratwurst.
Right.
If you're vegan, you can't have bratwurst.
Yeah. It ceases to be a bratwurst when you precede it with vegan. Like, stop.
Well, also it's like I also believe that. Listen, I know a lot of people who are vegan and are very creative. I think that vegan food relies, if you want it to be good, it has to rely heavily on aromatics. You got to have some sort of aromatic to really kick up the flavor in there, to kind of have it out there. And I also believe that a lot of vegan food, listen, if you're vegan for environmental or ethical reasons, that's all good. I commend you for it. And I commend you for the willpower to actually be that healthy to your body. But I'm also going to say, with this Impossible meat that's coming out now, it's so much that it's being made that pretty soon it's going to be putting out the same amount of greenhouse gases to make it as, the factory farming industry is. So there's that to kind of marinate on. No,
totally. And I like what you say. I had never really given the historical aspect consideration of veganism. I always go back to long time ago. I was a middle school, high school English teacher. And so the language patterns speak to, the Germanic form was cow and pig, who saw them in the field, and beef and pork was of French descent, the aristocracy. I never considered that, like, those, good, true vegan recipes would come from, history of all things.
I'm gonna tell you what I believe in my heart to be the best vegan dish in the world. And again, it's not vegan to be vegan. It's naturally just vegan. I believe that Serbian Balkan food I believe it's on its way for the next big culinary boom, kind of like what Thai food did 15 years ago. I really do believe that Serbian and Balkan and Croatian and Slovenian, the whole Balkan area, I believe it's overdue for a whole food boom. But besides that, there's a natural dish. All your listeners should go look it up. It's called prebranic.
Okay.
It's spelled P-R-B-B-R-A-N-A-C. Prebranic is a Serbian dish. It's where you basically take onions, right? And you take like 6 or 7. You saute them low and slow. I'm talking for like 45 minutes on low heat, 40 minutes to an hour, low heat. Get them nice and syrupy. Then you take some fava beans and you put them in a casserole with those onions, and you just put garlic, olive oil, paprika, and a little bit of water and olive oil to kind of coat the top, and you put it in the oven for like an hour, and the top caramelizes beautifully. And it is like the most flavorful, meaty, delicious vegan dish I've heard in the world.
All right.
P-R-B-B-R-A-N-A-C.
P-R-B-B-R-A-N-A-C. Got it.
Look that up. Make it. It's in my opinion the best vegan dish in the world.
You heard it here.
It's not vegan to be vegan. They just made it because it was simple. It's all they had to make it with.
Yeah, it's just vegan out of necessity. So P-R-B-B-R-A-N-A-C. You heard it here first. Prebranic. I love it. I learned something new today. I adore it. Going back then, obviously you're here and now in the culinary, but you obviously made that switch. You made that call to do the thing. And again, I originally knew you to be in music PR. And then all of a sudden, like, you're posting all this food stuff. And then I find out from you that you went to culinary school. How did that transpire?
So, what long story happened was in 2008, I moved to New York City. I had a job as a music publicist. I was working a lot of media, copyright, so it all kind of worked out well that I kind of made it into music publicity. 4 or 5 years later, things were going very well. But living in New York City, you really do see like the food capital of America, because every culture is represented here, and they all have their own food. I mean, the first year I lived here, I just spent all my money on food and going out. It was just kind of a fun thing. I learned a lot about hospitality. I made a lot of friends in the hospitality business. And I'd already been cooking a lot too, because I had access to a lot of good ingredients that I didn't have other places. So long story short is in 2011, 2012, my 5 years in here, I was laid off from my job. The music business kind of went over music business kind of in the early 2010s. Well, since the early 2000s, it's had a hard time kind of trying to find its footing since MP3s and streamings came out, because the whole monetary royalties came from physical sales, like CDs, records, this and that. So it's been kind of winging it since then. So long story short, the last quarter of the year, there's always a lot of layoffs, and I got laid off one year.
Yep.
So I took some clients with me who was working freelance, and I knew these guys who worked for record labels, these three guys who worked for record labels that I'd done projects with before, and they owned a bar. So I took a job as a bartender, never bartended before ever. Worked my way up from a bar back to a bartender. And I was like, okay, and I did my clients during the day, worked at night, just exhausted myself. And then basically I kind of said to myself, well, I'll just work at this bar until I find another full-time PR office job. After a while, I was kind of like, well, even though it's exhausting, I kind of like being my own independent person, this and that. And working at a bar, I kind of started seeing with my own eyes. I started taking my PR acumen into that business. I started seeing like what works, what doesn't work, customer service, marketing, promos, this and that. Our bar was nearby a lot of big and medium-sized music venues in New York City, so I would throw after parties for bands playing there. We'd have them come to the bar, and I really just started getting immersed in the hospitality business. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to, I already got the front of the house part down. I want to take the back of the house part down. So I went to culinary school. I went to ICE. So on top of this, I'm bartending, doing PR, and going to culinary school. I barely had any moment to eat or breathe or sleep. But it was a fun ride, and I kind of just took that PR acumen there. I think I chose ICE as my culinary school because they teach not just how to be a chef, but also the good business side of food. Because to be a good chef, you kind of have to be kind of a good accountant too.
Yes.
A little bit. You got to know like food costs, margins, labor costs, like seasonal food, how you can go out. I mean, obviously you can imagine what a nightmare it is now with inflation and supply chain issues. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just kind of took it from there. So after that, went and worked at a couple restaurants. And then eventually I kind of went out on my own. So I had my Music Business Connects. I kind of did a lot of events, catering, a lot of events and catering that I had through my Music Business Connects. Mm-hmm. And was still like doing bar programs here and there because I worked at a couple of bars that had high-end like whiskey and bourbon programs, and whiskey and bourbon is not very popular. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of just in that whole world, and everything was really going well. 2019 was an amazing year for me on all ends, and then the pandemic happened, and then I had to find a way to be like, wow, I can't make money because people can't be in the same room. We can't even breathe the same air as each other, and I kind of had to figure out what was what, and eventually I was just kind of bartending a little after that, doing some catering here and there, very sparsely, piecemeal. And then my culinary school has this job portal and a bulletin board, and there was a family in Uptown Manhattan who just needed a private chef, and I responded to the ad, and I went and gave them a tasting, and then, voila, it all kind of worked from there. So I'm doing that now. I work for one family now.
Love that. I mean, that's a hell of a ride, man. That's a lot of life to live.
I consider myself very fortunate because the pandemic, while it wasn't easy on a lot of people, myself included, a lot of people still have not really come back from it.
Oh man!
And the restaurants that did survive are still hanging on month to month right now.
Yeah.
And just the food costs are just insane at this moment. Like I saw cauliflower is pretty much $5 a pound now.
Jesus Christ!
Cauliflower. That's just absurd.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's crazy. I mean, all of it is. But your story, sir, I mean, bringing you to present, doing what you're doing what you love, it sounds like, is awesome. So let's talk about, when you put on that private chef mode or really anytime you're in the kitchen, what is it where is it, rather, I should say, you're drawing inspiration from? Now, obviously, we've talked about your deep culinary history in your family, but are there other places you're pulling from now?
Well, I always loved the technique of French cooking. I believe that French cooking, the escoffier, the brigade system, mm-hmm. is really what made the modern restaurant industry pretty much tenable for the last almost century.
Yeah.
It gave the system of how you break down a kitchen, how you break down the techniques, and, I believe that I went hard. I love history and geography, I always have. So, I broke down just every region of France. I learned how to cook it all throughout culinary school and afterwards, even a little bit beforehand too. And I believe that if you can cook every region of French food, you can really apply it to any style of food in the world. I actually, after culinary school, I actually wanted to be a French chef. I just wanted to cook in French restaurants and cook French food full time. That's all I wanted to do. But with my background, being Italian American, I really got more so just naturally with who I was cooking for and what I was cooking. I would say my specialty pretty much is like Mediterranean, Middle Eastern food, basically anything like Portugal, Spain, south of France, Greece, Morocco, Palestine, Jordan, Iran, Syria, Turkey, all that kind of food. It really is in some ways, even though every country has their own distinct flavor and palate. I think if you go anywhere in the world, you'll see that every country, next to every country, has a little bit of every country in the kind of like their food. It's all kind of mixed in there,
No, I think that's a great point, and I wanted to touch on that because obviously the softball answer would be your Italian roots, but when you're throwing out Serbian, Baltic, vegan food, I know the inspiration goes like quite a bit deeper. Now, being somebody who probably has to be on point, on fleek if the kids are listening, food is very much trend driven, and you had mentioned that Serbian Baltic would possibly be a trend in the up and coming. Balkan. I'm sorry. I wrote down Baltic. Fine. It's Balkan. Talk to me about other trends we the diners should be looking for.
Right now, I would say, Korean food is really popular right now. That's really a big in part due to Roy Choi, who is a chef who I really admire. Yeah. Who was really taught, he really revolutionized the food truck movement in the mid 2000s in Los Angeles. He was a child of Korean immigrants who, even though his food is seen as Korean, it's really Korean American inspired. But I believe that I think Korean food is doing really well because Roy Choi kind of led the movement right now. He does amazing, which I always believe, if you don't need to be a trained chef to be a good cook. You really don't. You just have to know simple, basic techniques. And I think I will endorse this here. Roy Choi's masterclass on intuitive cooking is by and far the best I've seen as far as intuitive cooking. It teaches you how to not just not measure, because you have to measure some stuff, just how to look at certain things and say, okay, I can do this, this, and this, and make this, and kind of just do it in your head, kind of be creative. I'd say, I will say Serbian and Baltic food, really is overdue for a trend. There's a kind of kebab called shavapi that's made, it's really popular in this neighborhood in Queens I used to live in called Ridgewood. There's a lot of other stuff too. For a while, Hawaiian food was kind of popping up here in New York. Now, of course, Korean and Hawaiian food, cuisines like that are more so big and better on the West Coast, I'd say. Yeah. And more so tapas has really been flying off the handle the last few years. I love tapas, but I think you really gotta do it right, which a lot of places don't really get it to the authentic Spanish style as I had in Spain. But there still are some good spots here and there.
Well, and they think too that just, so long as something's on a small plate, we're going to call it a tapas. Like tapas doesn't necessarily equate to a small plate.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right on. Now let's put our mean girl pants on for a minute here, and let's talk stuff you wish would just go away. What is popular today that Chris Pacifico is absolutely spun out tired of?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say brunch. I think brunch has just jumped the shark. I'm over it. Sadly, I'll be honest, because with brunch, the prep is all different. It's a whole different prep, and the ripple effect is totally different. The problem is most of brunch has eggs, and usually when you're serving someone eggs and you're in the kitchen, you literally have 60 seconds at best to get that food off the pass and onto the table. And so usually with brunch, if there's a ripple in the front of house, it goes to the back of the house. If there's a ripple in the back of the house, it goes to the front of the house. It's a weird thing like that. Sadly, brunch is a very economic reality that a lot of restaurants have to have. It's something you have to remain open, to remain relevant, especially if you're in a trendy neighborhood. It's something that like, you just need to kind of have to pay your bills.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of just don't even break even on it. It's just there to keep your restaurant relevant, keep it branded.
Yep.
Like it's an essential evil if you're a new or established restaurant.
Yep.
Now, if you're a 5-star Michelin star dining place, you don't need it because you're already established as it is.
Right.
Not to say that no Michelin star places don't have brunch. The other thing I'm really not liking is sous vide. I think sous vide, I think it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of money. I think it just takes away the fundamentals from cooking meat with direct and indirect heat.
Yeah.
I think if you wanna have meat cooked in fluid, just braise some meat.
Yes.
Braise it.
Yes.
Simply braise it. I don't like the livery taste. It kind of just gives everything. I think it's wasteful to the environment. I just think it's just not my jive. I also believe that with like, if you want to try something really good, make braised Korean short rib.
Hell yes.
If you follow a braised Korean short rib recipe to a T, it'll blow the pants off anything you make into sous vide. So I think sous vide is just it's gotta be gone.
I'm not saying it
has to be gone. I'm saying it's just not my thing. The trend is just nuts. And also, I love bacon, but bacon has jumped the shark.
Bacon everything.
Like, I love bacon. I have nothing bad against bacon proper, but everything is bacon. I think one year I saw bacon flavored Ritz crackers. It's like, where does this end?
Yep.
You know?
It's not going to. Evian's going to come out with a bacon water.
Yeah. And sriracha. Again, I love sriracha sauce as a condiment.
Yeah.
Everything is sriracha, and hibiscus. Just sriracha this, hibiscus that. It's just like,
Yep.
Stuff.
I pretty much 5 for 5. 5 for 5 would agree with you. Like a sous vide steak, I've seen people take legit beautiful steak and sous vide, and I just don't get it. It's like, what is the reason? Like, who hurt you when you were young? Like, something happened.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Yeah.
So you're doing what you're doing, and you're obviously killing it, and you're obviously a fountain of knowledge. Again, I feel like that's inherited from your family bloodline. Honored to know him. Honored to have. I didn't get to tell you before. Honored to have had the Italian wedding soup, and I can attest, it is like lights out. One of the best things I've ever eaten in my life. But here's Chris, doing your thing, doing the private chef thing. What's next for you? Talk to me about the 3-year, the 5-year plans.
Right now, I really gotta say, I think it's one of those things. Like this job that I got, I didn't really seek out looking for it. It just kind of happened. And I feel like my path in the culinary world, whatever's going to happen, I think it'll just kind of come to me. I think right now I'm just really happy where I'm at. I like the fact that the family I work for gives me a lot of freedom and flexibility to kind of cook the food with the love and the knowledge that I put into it. They're very they like to talk about food. They know about spice and they know about cooking and technique and history. So I really gotta say right now, I'm just on the ride for where it is. I'm not really looking for anything more, and whatever comes up in the future or something, whatever something comes up, it'll happen. But I think sometimes, if you really try hard to look for something that you don't know what it is, that grass is always greener thing may not always be true. So right now I'm just kind of grooving where I am, and whatever comes up will kind of come up, but I'm really just happy to have, really good, just like, obviously just like good, steady work and a job that I like, especially after being 18 months during the pandemic, just piecemealing and doing this and that, and just being on a zigzag. So I'm just enjoying a consistent schedule at the moment.
I love it. I love it, man. Just ride it. Yeah, don't put something that's not there. Just let it go. Let it ride. And obviously nothing but success. Let's talk afters. A little bit more reverent, a little bit more off the cuff. You and I are cooking, hanging out, doing our thing, whether we're cooking for an event or something like that. And you've got control of the music. You are the DJ. What are we listening to while we sling?
I had a Spotify playlist I believe I sent you this weekend. It's just called Exotic Chef Mix for Cooking and Spicing. It's a Spotify playlist of just a lot of kind of old American R&B, but a lot of Mediterranean music. A lot of it's psych rock from I collect a lot of old records, and I get into a lot of world music from way back in the day in the 60s and 70s, and how during the whole hippie revolution here, every other country was kind of taking their twist on things. So it's a really cool playlist of like just a lot of other countries, mainly Mediterranean countries. There's some South American music, some Brazilian music on there too. And I believe that playlist just kind of has all the spice on it. There's a really cool Brazilian band called Os Mutantes. They were really big in the 60s in Brazil.
Nice.
They were this huge, like, psychedelic Brazilian band, and they still played a lot of shows and had big concerts in defiance of a military dictatorship back then, too. And so over the years, they've kind of regained popularity as record collectors, have gotten back together and played huge festivals. I'm really big into like a lot of jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have an Italian cooking for the Italian food. Of course, you go with the stereotypical Guido playlist of like, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Tony Bennett, Mario Lanza, all that kind of stuff. That it helps you when you're cooking a lot of red sauce and pasta and starch and carbs and things like that too.
Yep, you can taste it, man. I don't want to hear you can't taste the music. You can absolutely taste the goddamn music. Yeah. For sure. All right, so listen, we're going to duct tape you, put you in a trunk, fly you to a deserted island, and you can only bring 3 foods or food-type items with you. Inexhaustible supply, never runs out, but you can only take 3 things. What are you taking and why?
Well, obviously garlic's one of them.
Yep.
You gotta have that. I'm going to say garlic, that. I would say tomatoes. That might get too acidic and hurt my stomach up some. I guess you're going to need a starch in there, so I'm going to take fava beans for the starch.
Okay.
And I guess for the that can also be a protein.
Yep.
And I guess for the protein, I'm going to say, well, if I'm on an island, it's probably going to be more so to have access to fish.
Yep.
So let's just go with, well, are there spices there too? I have to assume I have to use what's on the island, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Let's assume there's some spices there. All right. Well, then I'm fishing, and let's just say, change it. Let's just say garlic, potatoes, and cod.
I love that. Jesus. Garlic, potato, cod.
Yeah. And just kind of work with it every which way. If I'm stuck on the island, so I assume I'm fishing for cod, so it's infinite there. Garlic bring with, potatoes bring with. So I don't think potatoes grow in sand on an island. So just enough protein and starch to get me by. And I'm sure on that deserted island I can find a lot of plants and fruits and maybe a wild boar to kill here and there, like a Lord of the Flies. Like a Lord of the Flies. Yeah.
I just see you putting on the face paint under your eyes. So next question, and you may very well break the combo of 195 episodes. Melanie Danea is a world famous photographer. Do you know of her?
I believe I've heard of her. Is she is she from France or?
Yes. And she's the one that did the shot of Bourdain with the beef femur between his legs, naked, so she's done all these high-end celebrity food shots, and she made two coffee table books, My Last Supper and The Next Course. And the late night after shift drinking game people from the kitchen play. It's like they're throwing the switch on you tomorrow. What's your last meal tonight? So, Chris Pacifico, I'm going to ask you, what's your last meal? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What's playing in the background? Who's there?
Well, if it's my last meal, as in, am I dying on my deathbed, or am I getting the death penalty? That's
God damn! First time I'm getting asked that. You're just, when you go to sleep, that's it.
Okay. If it's my last meal, I'm gonna. There's a region of Italy called Apulia, which is, I believe, it is I believe the one region on Earth in Italy that just takes the most rustic of foods. I'm talking just the most bare minimum, and just makes it blow up with flavor. They created the concept that was called Cucina Povera, which means cuisine of the poor in Italy. And I believe that they just do a lot of good, like, panzanello. It's like a turnover it's deep fried, has mozzarella and onions. They do focaccia. They do a lot of just bread out of simple stuff and a lot of simple soups and orchetta pasta. I don't know what food I would like from Apulia. I know everything I tried from there is very good. Mm-hmm. I tried a lot of it when I was in Italy. I would say just get me a chef who's from Apulia and just say dealer's choice.
Love it. Yeah, take the choice off. I adore that. What are you listening to?
What's that? I guess from Italy. Well, for doing Italian food, I'm gonna be listening to I'm going to say either Ennio Morricone, who did a lot of the old film scores,
Mm-hmm.
probably Italian film, because Italian music film scores got kind of rocking and jazzy back then. No, I'm going to be listening to anything, just the best of Nino Rota. He did the music for The Godfather, he did the La Dolce Vita music.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of neoclassical jazz funk scores. So yes, Apulian chef, listening to Nino Rota.
Oh, I love it. Morricone was the one that did the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right?
Yeah. His discography is so insanely crazy. He just kind of got with the times for rock and psychedelic rock and did all this stuff. And he performed up until his late 90s and he passed away too. So
that's
really
crazy.
Amazing lifespan of that guy.
God damn, that is awesome. Beautiful layout, beautiful spread, beautiful music. Just in time for the last question, Chris, the simplest but the most complex. What is food to you in a single word?
Communication, I believe, it conveys, it speaks, it comes from the heart, it comes from love, it comes from hate, it comes from food that you find easy. A lot of chefs torture themselves for certain dishes, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
It is communication on any level you want it to be.
I love it. Communication, and I have to say, brother, it was so nice to finally communicate with you in person. A fountain of knowledge. I expected no less. Again, not to lay it on that, hey, I know them, but from your family, obviously this makes sense, and I just wish you continued success. Folks can find you out on the Instagram at Pacifico Bruh, B-R-U-H, which I adore, because I hear that from my 15-year-old all the time.
Pacifibruh.
B-R-U-H, absolutely. Out on the FB. Just go out and check them out, man. It is about as entertaining as we get. With the election having been yesterday, holy shit, I was in stitches. I'm not gonna lie. The Papa Roach write-in option was amazing. I just have to name that. And I'm sure, again, people did that in PA. But Chris, absolute pleasure, absolute honor. Only the best to you, man.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'll definitely come back anytime you want.
Of course, man. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 196 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. With me today, Chef Chris Pacifico. Our producer, as always, has been the lovely, voluptuous Johnny Leland Robinson, a.k.a. the Reverend Johnny Lamoria. Be sure to check out all of his cinematic libertarian pirate party happenings in the 18431. Next episode is going to be 197. Perhaps an old friend returns. You're going to have to stay tuned to find out. Are you passing through central Pennsylvania and looking for one of the best dining experiences and craft brew menus around? Look no further. Turkey Hill Brewing Company and 991 Central Road in Bloomsburg, PA has everything you could ask for and then some. Service, food, beer together. Unbelievable. Be sure to check them out. Call them today for reservations. 570-387-8422. Call today.